Chris, a warm welcome to the Nifty Travel Podcast. How are you doing?
Very good, thank you, Alex. Not too bad. How are you?
Yeah, awesome. So, as I've probably been hinting at, this is a podcast all about travel, and one of the things I always like to ask my guests first is about what your earliest recollections of travel are.
My earliest recollections, probably when I was very, very young. I remember it mainly through photos, probably actually thinking back. But my dad played professional cricket for England, and for those people that don't know who I am, so I did a lot of travelling with him as a young kid, and we went to South Africa for 6 months. And so yeah, we stayed in Cape Town and doing the incredible things around that area there. That was definitely my first recollection of travel. Boulders Beach, Camps Bay, like absolutely incredible place that I haven't yet made it back to. So I'd love to go back at some point.
So did it give you a hint of what you might be doing in the future, or did you first go in a different direction?
Completely different direction, really. I was very fortunate with my upbringing. Really, I was spoiled because of my parents taking to be loads of different places, but I didn't really start seeing the world, so to speak, until probably 3 or 4 years ago. I'd been on the odd holiday, done a bit of Europe, and done the classic Greek islands and Spain and those sorts of places, but I only really started to see the world properly over the last probably 3 to 4 years, really.
So travel then has kind of been a consequence of doing other stuff then, as opposed to
Completely,
something.
yeah, very, very much so. Yeah, so I mean, work for me takes me to loads of incredible places. I'm in Sydney at the moment, so I've been traveling for the last 3 and a bit months. I've done Europe and America and now in Australia, and we're quite flexible with work in terms of it's like my own company, so I'm able to kind of take work with wherever I am, and yeah, like different life scenarios and situations have enabled us to see different parts of the world at different times, but being kind of a lot more recently. So like I say, I hadn't done much up until probably I was around about 22, 23. And then since then, I've been fortunate enough to see some incredible places.
And you seem like a people person to me, Chris. And um, is there something special about interacting with people that perhaps changes when you're on the traveling journey?
Oh, I mean, my fiance would tell you that I'm the person that unfortunately starts way too many conversations with people. I don't even realize I do it. To be fair, I just always seem to end up starting random conversations and finding out people kind of lots about people as we've kind of got going. Taxi drivers tend to be my main source of information, which end up being brilliant when you go into different countries. But yeah, no, there's something about when you're away, everyone seems happier, everyone seems more willing to have conversation, everyone seems to want to get to know you, and I find that so much easier to do when we're in different parts of the world compared to the UK. Put it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you've been saying, you're on a bit of a trip at the moment. You've been to a few continents already. What do you think? What have you thought of your journey over Europe, for instance?
Europe was incredibly busy for me. So Europe was a thing that happened. So originally, when me and Zoe were talking about going traveling, we were going to go straight to Australia. So that was the plan. We were going to go straight over to Sydney and spend a bit of time, just over a year there. Now, my best friend ended up choosing to get married in June in Greece, which therefore threw a bit of a spanner into the works, because why would we fly to Australia straight away and then fly back only a month later to then go back to Australia? It didn't make any sense. So we had this idea to start off, it was on the 13th of May, and decided to fly into Paris and make our way slowly from Paris through Europe and then into Greece, one of the Greek islands called Ithaca, for the wedding. And what amazes me about Europe is how different each place can be, even if you're only on a half an hour train journey. So from the hustle and bustle of Paris all the way through to the hills of Switzerland is only a 30 to 45-minute trip. But the difference from both places is totally eye-opening. Paris isn't my favorite place in the world. Switzerland was very much towards the top. And then as we made then our way down to Italy through Lake Como and Milan, and we ended up getting engaged in Florence. And so that has a very, very close place to our hearts, and we absolutely loved the city. And then as we made into Greece, I mean, lots of people listening, I'm sure have been to lots of these places, but Greece for me was just a beautiful place to be able to see different islands, but most importantly, relax with friends and do very much, or should I say, very little. Eat, drink, and be happy, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, you're right. I think Europe has a lot of differences, doesn't it? I think that's one of the things that surprises me. So, anything you particularly like to say about Switzerland?
Switzerland. So we're very, very fortunate in Switzerland to do the panoramic train ride, which was from, I can't remember exactly where it was from, but it was from one of the places to Interlaken. And the views on that Golden Express panoramic train were literally breathtaking, like absolutely incredible place. What I noticed about Switzerland is very similar to Yosemite National Park in America, actually. Like everywhere you look, there is a view. There is something to look at, something to see. And where we were in Montreux was just one of the most beautiful places ever. So yes, Switzerland for me was the views, the walks, the water, the mountain when we went up Glacier 3000. Again, all of those things are just huge memories for us, actually. And I've not really spoken about it actually with anybody. So you're the first person to interview me on these sorts of things. But Switzerland was up there with the best place that I've ever been to, although very, very expensive, I must add.
Mm. And I trust that you tested Swiss chocolate and Swiss beer.
We did. We were fortunately, my network of people actually was off LinkedIn. Actually, one of the guys called Ted. He messaged me, and he lives in Zurich, and he gave us a walking tour of the city with his dog Baloo. That's an amazing thing about traveling, right? Getting to meet all of these people that I would never have met before. And we went on a walking tour. He gave us, we sampled different chocolate. Also, the wine over there is very, very different, which is something that I love as well. So, yeah, Switzerland was a very, very beautiful and lots of amazing places to eat and drink. Amazing place.
Yeah, it sure is. So, next from Europe, you went across to North America. Is that somewhere you've been to before?
So I'd been to Miami for a business event, and I'd been to New York for like the classic 5-day trip that you go on, which I absolutely love with the hustle and bustle of the tourism out there. But it was America was another random thing that happened. So I turned 30 on July the 8th. And I remember me and Zoe were talking about this trip, planning it out. And again, like I mentioned, we were going to go to Australia. That was the plan. We weren't planning on doing Europe or America. And we thought, well, when we get to the wedding in Greece, we've got a choice to make. We either go from Greece through to like Asia, and then we do Bali and we do those sorts of places before we get to Australia. Or we go the other way around. We fly the other way and we go from Athens over to America. And we looked at the weather in Asia at the time, and it's like monsoon season when we were planning on going. So we're like, well, we'll avoid that. And I always had this like weird fascination of driving across America for my 30th birthday. And Route 66 is obviously a very, very like iconic and famous route. And so we flew in from Athens to New York. We managed, this is one of the best things ever. We managed to secure or managed to buy like the cheapest business class ticket ever that I've ever seen. Like normally business class tickets, you can either use like your American Express points or anything like that. We didn't have any at the time. And we were looking at like different flights across, and like 4 or 5 grand a ticket for business class each. And we're like, well, we're never going to pay that. Like, not going to happen. Well, we searched and searched, and we found a Delta flight, which was like, I think it was an extra £1,000 each more to be able to fly business class across. So I got my first experience of that, flying a long haul flight on business class, which was literally like amazing. You never want to go back when you do it. So we flew across to New York. We did a few days in New York, which again was incredible to go back a second time. And we said this time round, we weren't going to do the tourism stuff. We were just going to go to New York and just be in New York for a few days. And it was incredible to do it that way rather than just going here, there, and everywhere, trying to see everything. And then we went to one of my favorite cities that we've been to along the whole trip, which was Chicago. And we flew from New York to Chicago, which, again, the deep dish pizza in Chicago, incredible. The lifestyle there, the weather there, it was a beautiful place where, again, we got to meet some great people that we'd met online as well. So yeah, that was the beginning of that road trip.
So New York, yeah, it's a fascinating city. So what differences did you see then, just being someone walking around versus following the crowd, so to speak?
I think it's like there is more to see than you quite realize. So one of the things that I did when I went to New York the first time was I got the metro, like the subway, like the majority of the time. So we spent a lot of time underground, so you don't really get to see a huge amount of New York in itself, like walking the streets and walking the blocks. Whereas this time, where we stayed was in a much better location. And it was kind of like right in the middle of absolutely everything that you needed. So we stayed, for those of you that know New York, we stayed just underneath Central Park and next to Hell's Kitchen. So like it is prime area. We got a great deal on a hotel, and we just walked everywhere. So up to Central Park, we spent a day in Central Park, which I literally went to see the plaza the first time I went to New York. That was all I wanted, was to get the Home Alone photo. That's all I really wanted. Whereas this time, the weather was amazing. I went to New York in the winter the first time. I went in the summer this time. And so seeing Central Park at its best, seeing kind of how people just live out there was incredible. The food and the drink, when you're not going to all the touristy places, you find some amazing New York spots to go to. And we went on a night out in one of the places that got recommended to us, which, again, I didn't do the first time round. So, yeah, it was just a lot more calmer and more relaxing, and actually felt a bit more like a holiday than the first time, because the first time I felt like I needed a holiday after the New York holiday. Like it was so busy.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you should feel it was more relaxing, because New Yorkers are notoriously, well, at least that's what we led to believe, that they're very loud and out there. So interesting that you had it felt a lot calmer the second time around.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely so. Like I think it was more our temperament and how we felt being there at that time. So because we weren't having to be at a certain place at a certain time, we kind of just floated along and being able to just take it in. Yeah, you get people like running and for everything and hustling, bustling, barging past you. But when you've not got to be anywhere, and you just kind of let it go. And so that's one of my biggest bits of advice really for everyone traveling. It's like there's sometimes really, really nice to not have to be anywhere and just exist in the place. Like we're doing that currently in Sydney now, and being able to wake up in the day, go to the beach, go grab some breakfast, grab some, like, walk around, see what's going on. We're in Bondi at the moment. We've been in Manly. We've been in Mans Point. We've done different areas, but we've not had to be anywhere at any point. We can just exist in the place, and that I've really enjoyed. It's been really, really cool, and that was the same for New York.
Yeah. No, it's certainly different. I know when I first left South Oxfordshire and went back 6 months ago, I thought everybody was running. Why was everybody running and rushing around? It's a strange feeling, moving out and revisiting old places. So you did the Route 66, which is, as you say, it's a very iconic thing to do. People have sung songs about it. What was it like doing it?
It was a really weird route, because a lot of it isn't really open anymore. So like when you make your way from Chicago to St. Louis and then across through to like Texas and across, there's a lot of places that are kind of like abandoned and have kind of like died a slow death because of the interstate being built across America now. So it was a lot of driving. Like it was 3 to 4 hours a day, pretty much minimum. But it didn't feel like a long time. So you're always stopping. We downloaded a Route 66 app on the iPhone, and that kind of then directed us and kept us on the route. Because one of the things that's really hard about it is staying on it. Because your sat nav, if you're using like Apple Maps or Google Maps, it will take you onto the interstate every single time, whether you like it or not. So the app was really, really good for that. And it was really, really cool again to see how different states in America almost feel like different countries. Literally, you go from being in the central district of Chicago, which is just like a very, very cool, vibey city, to being in the Wild West, pretty much. And the the places that you go to, it's really hard to explain because there's nothing like wow to see on Route 66, really, but it's just going across America and seeing like how big America is and seeing you kind of go across it. And the days just go so quickly when you're out there. Like we were in America for just over a month and it just went in a blink of an eye.
Yeah, and there seemed to be quite a few places where you were the only ones there. That must have been a very strange feeling to have.
Yeah, again, like with it, because of like you get used to it really quickly. So when you do it the first time, it's the most strangest thing in the world being in an abandoned place. So very, very odd. But as you kind of go along the route, you realize actually that you're only 5 minutes away from something. And it, again, just really, really interesting to see how an interstate can completely kill certain areas of a country and you don't realize it. Like as you're if you haven't done it, you don't realize it. But as we drove through, we saw garages, houses, factories, all of them like completely empty. They hadn't been knocked down, bulldozed or anything. Like they're still there. There's just nothing going on. And so yeah, it's something that you get used to really quickly, but the first time around you wonder what's happened. Very, very strange.
It must have seemed like a set out of an old Wild West movie.
Very much so. Yeah, very, very much so. And it's just something which I've never seen before. Like I've not experienced that, but it's the first time I've seen anything like it. So yeah, no, it was really, really cool to say that we've done that route. It's not something that I would do again. I'll be really honest. It's not something that I do again. It's something that I've done and I've ticked it off and I've done it. But our Route 66 trip really took a real like spike upwards in terms of like fun and activity when we kind of hit like Bryce Canyon and Zion National Park. That was where like I fell in love with the route because suddenly you go from being kind of in like the deep dark places of St. Louis all the way into kind of then the amazing views and kind of nothingness in Zion, which boiling hot when we because we went peak summer, but absolutely incredible place.
Yeah. So I guess there's too many places to highlight that really sort of will stick in your mind forever.
Yeah, there's a few that stand out. Like Amarillo was a place that we really liked. Was we went out for some good food and drinks there. Actually, it was a really nice place. But then really Chicago, the beginning of Route 66 for us was incredible. But like I say, we did Route 66, but we did come off it at times. And then when we hit Vegas, we did come off it completely. So yeah, it was definitely something which I'm so happy we did. But the West Coast was where kind of after Chicago, the West Coast was where then kind of that trip was like turned into a once in a lifetime incredible place to be.
So what's it about the West Coast you think is makes it memorable then?
Well, I'm going to count Vegas as part of the West Coast. I'm just going to count that, although it's not quite on the coastline. It's a lot inland. But I turned 30 in Vegas, which is pretty cool to do. And so we did some amazing things like the helicopter ride over the Grand Canyon, which was a surprise birthday present. I didn't know we were doing it, which was literally incredible. And then again, we didn't have any real plans in Vegas. We were just going to go and exist in it, and it was just a place where I'd had a lot of mixed reviews, but it's a place where I'm so happy we got to because Like we spent a fortune. It's one of the most expensive. It's like Switzerland. It's so expensive. But what we did, and you can do it cheaply, to be fair as well. But what we did on that kind of 4 or 5 days, we ended up booking an extra night because we enjoyed it that much. Like it was just incredible. But as we left Vegas, we then did the national parks. So we did Yosemite, which was the one that I absolutely fell in love with. But there's a couple like Kings Canyon as you're going up towards Yosemite. But Yosemite, your national park for me is, there's places where like you say to people, you've got to do it once in your life. You've got to go to Yosemite National Park without a shadow of a doubt. That and Bryce Canyon, Bryce National Park, and then Yosemite are the two places for me which were incredible. And we drove through Yosemite and then went up to as far as San Francisco. The West Coast, again, we learned this. We didn't know it before we went, but the West Coast is actually got a lot of homeless there. Like a lot of people are sent from Central America because of the heat over to the West Coast. And so like there's things like that to be like aware of when you go in there. There's lots of it out there, but San Francisco was a lot cooler. It was quite like to get away from the heat of Vegas and Yosemite going in. Well, Yosemite wasn't that warm, but the others were. But when you get to San Francisco, the temperature drops, and that was a nice relief. And then as we then made our way down to LA, that interstate highway 1 drive from San Francisco to LA, when the full route is open, for us, we had to divert a little bit off it. But when the full route is open, it is one of the most beautiful drives. It is the most incredible thing to do.
Yes, it is. I can definitely agree with you there, 100%. So, having done America, you've now made it to Australia. So another complete change.
Yeah, we flew from LA. So we going that way round. I can't remember what day we left on, but let's say we left on the 24th of July, I think it was. Because of the time difference and you flying in that direction, we actually lost the 25th of July. So I've not seen that day this year. We arrived on the 26th. And the flight over actually was relatively easy. It's the longest flight I've been on. It was like 15 and a bit hours. But really, really easy flight to do as we went from LA to Sydney. And Sydney was a place which I expected big things from, and it is 100% met it. So we decided with this trip, we've got a few friends out in Australia that, to be fair, had reached out to me randomly on Instagram to let me know that they were here. And so we first touched base in McMahon's Point, which is north, just north of the bridge. And we were there for about a week. We were there for 2 weeks, I think it was in total. And we were kind of in and out of the city there. So Sydney is a city. There is so much to do. Everybody seems to be so positive and friendly out here. That's one of the things that I've loved. We're just coming to the end of winter. And like we've been on the beach today. It's like 25 degrees and we're on the beach today. So like the climate is awesome out here. But after 2 weeks in McMahon's Point, we went to Manly, which is another area. So we decided that we'd do a few different areas of Sydney before we decide where we wanted to stay. And then one of our friends messaged and said, look, we've got a house in Allenby Heights. Would you want to come and stay with us for a month? So we've ended up doing 2 weeks at McMahon's Point. We did a couple of weeks in Manly. We're doing a couple of weeks in Bondi, this is where I am now. And then we're doing a couple of weeks in Coogee before we go back to kind of Manly area for a month. And yeah, Australia for us, the biggest thing, we can see why so many people decide to live here, because it's literally just a better version of England, in my opinion. It's warmer. People are so friendly out here. The only thing we miss is friends and family back home, really. Everything else, if we could pick them up and move them out here, I don't think we'd come back.
Yeah. No, I am of course biased because I have relatives in Australia myself. So I 100% concur. So out of all the places you've been on this particular trip, have you been surprised by anything?
Have I been surprised by anything? I mean, I don't really know if I'm going to get a load of hate for this, but oh well, I'm going to say it anyway. I found America a very strange place, a huge place, a very strange place. And in some parts, you feel extremely safe, and in some parts, you don't. And I haven't felt that unsafe feeling anywhere. Actually, I've been lucky enough to do Asia. I've done now in Australia, then Europe, America. There was times where we were a little bit scared. I'll tell you, there was a story about us when we were in LA, and we were sitting in Santa Monica, just having some drinks and some food. And this is the thing around the homelessness, right? You got to be aware of it. Literally sat there. A guy comes walking by, no top on, no shoes on. He's got a boot in his hand, like a random ski boot, and then a bottle of Gatorade. And he comes across, grabs a pint glass off this guy's table. Doesn't even bother drinking the pint. I would have drank the pint if I was him, to be fair. But literally gets the pint, empties it, and then just goes and sits on the wall with his glass, literally out of nowhere. And I was completely taken back by that sort of thing happen because I've never seen that sort of thing happen before. So that was kind of eye opening. I was amazed and blown away by Vegas. Like, absolutely loved the place. And I didn't think, for those people that have no idea who I am, I speak about it a lot online, but I had a bit of a gambling addiction when I was younger. I say a bit, I had a gambling addiction when I was younger. So I thought that Vegas would be a place which would be quite dangerous to me, but we hardly gambled at all when we were there. But the grandness of it, how luxury it is, was just incredible. We spent a lot of time. We stayed in the Bellagio, which is a hotel that I 100% recommend. I absolutely loved it. But Vegas surprised me. I had not low expectations, but I didn't have huge expectations of it. But it was absolutely incredible when we went there. Albeit what happened in Santa Monica when we were kind of with the homeless guy. Absolutely loved that place. Like, it was a beautiful place, beautiful beaches, absolutely incredible. And I don't know why, but I wasn't expecting to love Chicago as much as I did either. Like, Chicago was just a beautiful, beautiful city with a place that I'd 100% go back to and spend more time there. So that was a few things around America. Europe, I mentioned Switzerland, didn't I, before? We didn't really give Lake Como a fair shot. It rained for 3 days when we were in Lake Como. And there's a video that went a little bit mad online for me where I looked at our maps in Lake Como, and we were a 5-minute walk from the train station, and we were staying in this little apartment. It was a beautiful apartment. 5-minute walk from the train station. Did our Apple Maps say, or Google Maps say? And what we didn't realize was that 5 minutes, it's literally a vertical climb up around about, I would say, close to around 500 to 700 steps. Now, we've packed up for 3 and a bit months at this point. Like, we'd had our luggage. We were away for a year and a half, but we had in our minds, like, get through Europe and America. So we had 2 huge suitcases, 2 backpacks full, and then another bag just for good measure with it. And the luggage must have weighed around about 27 to 30 kilos. And I'm having to carry these 2 cases up one at a time, up this stairs, all the way up to the top of the train track. And so Lake Como for me was very much a sad experience because it rained, and then I had to have a huge workout carrying it up to the train station as we left. But it's a place that is obviously well renowned and very, very, very nice. We just didn't get a huge experience of it. So that was an interesting one. And then Australia for me, like I mentioned before, I had huge expectations of Sydney, and for it to meet it, I think explains how great of a place it is. And so, coming from America, where it was £20 for a glass of wine in the places where we were going, to Australia, which is renowned. Sydney's renowned for being expensive, but I'm paying £7 for a glass of wine out here, so I'm very, very happy.
Yes, I bet. So you kind of hinted at it a little bit, but I wanted to ask you whether you consider yourself a travel planner or a spontaneous traveler.
So I'm definitely I need to know where I'm going. I need to know kind of like the destination. Like Route 66, I'm fortunate, but Zoe planned the whole trip for this. And previously, like, I would definitely have kind of done planning myself. However, Zoe is the planner in our relationship. She does literally everything. But I don't think anyway, like, rock up. So some people, when they do Route 66, they don't have accommodation booked. They just drive to a random hotel and stay in the hotel. I am a review searcher. I am a booking.com filter by price point and rating, and then go scouring the reviews for the one negative one and find the reason not to book it. That's the sort of person I am. So I'm definitely a travel planner rather than a spontaneous person, but I do like spontaneous days out. So long term planning, short term in the day, we don't have huge plans throughout the days when we're here. If something comes up, then we do it. But we have things that we definitely want to do whilst we're in Australia, which we will definitely be planning out, like we did America and Europe.
Yeah, yeah. It's good. It's good to take a risk into the unknown sometimes, Chris. Yeah, you never
Yeah, I
know
can
what.
imagine.
Uh, so, do you have a what lessons or advice would you give to other travelers?
I think one, understand where you're going. I know there's the spontaneous stuff that what you're doing there is really important, but like if you're going to do some of the things that we've done, Route 66 is a prime example. Like, unless you understand what you're going to do each day, you'll never get it done in time. And so, like, there's lots to see on Route 66, which the app will tell you to do. But you've got to, there's so much to do. You could do 2 months doing Route 66 and still not see it all driving. So there's certain things that you want to see when you do it. You've got to be like ahead of the game and plan your. So we planned each day, each evening. So when we arrived in a place, we'd plan the next day. Then we do that day, we plan the next. So that planning really, really helped us. And when you like Vegas, it's like it's not really a lesson, but it's a top tip. If you're someone that likes free stuff, and there's actually a slots game that you can download. It's called My Vegas. You can probably put the link in the chat, but you can spin for free. You don't have to put any money into it. It's a free app. But if you spin, you earn points. And those points, they're just free experience points. And then you can exchange those points for free things when you're in Vegas. So when we got there, I said that we didn't gamble much. The only gambling that we did were the free vouchers that we got given off this app. But one of my friends recommended it to me. And you can earn up to like 10 million points just by spinning for 20 minutes a day up until you go. You get free accommodation, free food, free upgrades, free flights, free drinks, free everything from this app. So you can end up going to Vegas and pay literally nothing and have the time of your life. So that app, My Vegas, is amazing. And then in terms of other lessons, I'm doing a lot of work whilst traveling, I guess is the biggest thing. So understanding time zones. If you're doing, we had a funny experience when we were doing the Route 66 in Arizona, and we were on our way to do a day trip somewhere, and there's a part of Arizona which doesn't follow daylight saving time. Phoenix, I believe it is. It doesn't follow daylight saving time, and so with that, we were ending up driving across a time zone, and suddenly our clocks had changed an hour forwards. They jumped an hour ahead, so we were due to arrive at 10 a.m. for a event that started at 11 a.m. Obviously, when our clocks jumped forward, it jumped forward to 11 a.m. and we're like, literally, we're going to be late for our event. We're not going to be able to make it. So we rang them, and it's really ridiculous, isn't it? You have to ring an event and actually ask them, what time is it there? Because we genuinely have no idea whether we're going to be on time or late. So understanding time zones, really important. If you're working, managing time zones, really important, because I was an idiot at the beginning of the trip in Chicago where I didn't block out my calendar for US time. And so I was having to wake up at 2 or 3 a.m. in Chicago to do calls in the UK because I didn't manage my calendar properly. America, really hard to work. Australia, dream for work. Like, I live in the day when I'm in Australia, I do whatever I want. And then I start work at 4 p.m. Australia time. We're recording this now. It's 12 o'clock midday UK. It's 9 o'clock for me, Australia. So yeah, it works incredibly well. But in around about 2 months' time, I think it is, the time difference in Sydney goes from 9 hours to 11 hours. So that wouldn't work for me. And therefore, that's why we're going to Perth. So they've got then back to the 9 hour time difference again, to be able to kind of manage the workload whilst also being able to see incredible parts of the world.
Yeah. So I guess just a couple more questions. So I wanted to get a feel. Are you a planes, trains, or an automobile person?
I've done all three on this trip. So it's been a really good. The driving across. So I'd never driven on the other side of the road before. That was a big thing for me. So when I got to, my first experience of it was when we got to Catalonia. So we hired like a little Suzuki Swift, automatic for me. I'm never going to drive a manual car when I'm abroad, but Suzuki Swift and driving that around the island. That was the first experience for me of driving abroad. And then obviously driving across America was one incredible experience. And it's amazing how you get so used to being on the other side of the road. Because when we got to Sydney, obviously went back to being on the left-hand side of the road again. So yeah, it was a really weird thing. So driving, I think you get to see so much more when you drive, like incredible. However, it does take its toll on you after a little while. Driving long days is difficult. Trains, the panoramic express train in Switzerland was, I'd say, one of the most iconic things that we did. It's the same cost as getting a normal train. So getting a train again from, I think we also did it from Lake Como to Milan. So we got a train down from there. So we got to see amazing views out the train window. And then the speed of a flight obviously helps speed everything up. So for me to see parts of the world, car or train, and then obviously to get to further afield, the plane's typically the only option. So unless I'm going to fly business class, I would definitely choose cars and trains.
Absolutely. So, well, we have something in common, Chris, and we both like doing some podcasting. So, I wondered if you could perhaps mention for the audience what you do and what you use your podcast to talk about.
Yeah, of course. So I run a company called Pipeline 44, and we're a social media marketing consultancy, really. So I utilize the podcast. We have two. I have Straight to the Point, which is where I'm known to be quite a blunt and direct character. So I basically talk about all of my lessons in entrepreneurship and growing a business on Straight to the Point. And then the Social Selling Secrets podcast is all about marketing and making money online. So two podcasts. We interview a couple of people every quarter, but a lot of it is actually me and my business partners just speaking. And we're about to launch Social Selling Secrets in September. And we have done Straight to the Point for 3 and a bit years now, so quite a while. And yeah, podcasting is one of my favorite things to do. I get to talk, and do you know what? Some interest, like people actually find me interesting, which is quite nice. I have my loyal fans that tune in. But yeah, podcasting is something that I absolutely love to do.
Yeah, well, I can definitely agree, because even though this is a new channel and you're kindly my sixth guest, I've already had some amazing conversations, and you learn so much from having conversations, as I'm sure you fully appreciate. Well,
100%.
Chris, yeah. So, Chris, it's been absolutely amazing having you on as a guest, and thank you very much for your time. And isn't it amazing that it's almost like we're sitting next to one another, and yet we are about 12,000 miles in distance. So
incredible, isn't it? But yeah, thank you very much for having me on. I appreciate it a lot. It's been good fun.
Yeah, thank you.